Hello everybody! I hope you're all having a great day today. It is a beautiful day today. So today we are going to be talking about my review of the 2020 Scout. Finally happy to be out on the road. This is the first ride since I got LASIK surgery last week, so got my eyes all fixed up. And all I wanted to do is ride since then. So I gave it a week to heal, so now I'm finally able to go out and ride and just enjoy myself. Man, even a week. Not that long in time, but feels like a long time. I have had this bike for 1 year. I bought this bike last March, right before lockdown, right before COVID really kicked in. And it is currently March, and it's a couple days after my birthday. So I thought it'd be a good time to do a review. I've got, let's see how many, I have thousands of miles. I've got pretty much 7,000 miles. So by the time I get home, I'll have 7,000 miles on the bike. And I think that's an adequate amount of time to have a educated opinion and experience with the bike. A little information about me before we jump in, because this is going to play a role into the context of my opinion. I am 6'3", and I'm about 200 pounds. So that way you have some context for when I review certain things about the bike. So I rode the bike completely stock for about 1,000 miles, maybe 1,500 miles before I started changing up a few things. So my initial impression of the bike as stock is you're gonna want to upgrade a few things. But that was always my impression of the bike. Is I bought it because I bought it knowing that I was going to upgrade quite a few things on the bike, and that I was going to do some work on it. That's why I bought this bike. There's a good selection of aftermarket parts, and so I'm going to be able to work on it and really customize the bike and make it my own. So that being said, there were quite a few things that I would recommend that you swap out pretty quickly. One being the seat. The seat was very mushy and not great for long rides. You know, I'd ride for about, depending on what your definition of a long ride is. For me, about 250 miles in one day, and my butt would be killing me at the end of that. So I do recommend upgrading the seat. The shocks, in my opinion, weren't too bad being stock, but I did upgrade those.
Hey everyone, there is one more point I wanted to make on the rear shocks and the front fork springs. I experienced quite a bit of bottoming out, and that is why I did swap out the rear shocks. However, I still do have the stock front fork springs, and it continues to bottom out every now and then on some relatively minor bumps. The front fork springs also do allow quite a bit of vibration from the engine to pass through to your hands, so after a long ride, your hands are going to feel quite numb and tingly. I solved that problem by wrapping the grips with leather and wearing thicker gloves. Alright, with that, let's get back to the video.
The exhaust is fairly quiet and it is very heavy. So if you're trying to lose some weight on the bike, the exhaust is a good place to start. And I did swap out my exhaust. And by the way, I will also be recording a video on all of the modifications that I've done to the bike. So if you would like a list of everything that I have done, hold on to that video. So I do recommend you subscribe. Shameless plug. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss that video when it comes out. But I did swap it out for a Dean Speed exhaust. So one of the other things I did swap out and change pretty quickly was the handlebars. So I swapped out the stock handlebars for the Mini Apes by Indian at the 500 mile mark. So when I brought the bike in for the 500 mile service, I just had them swap out because I knew that was going to be something I had to swap out pretty quickly. Again, being 6'3", the stock handlebars, I was leaning quite far over and I was having to kind of be a taco.
I say taco, they say taco.
Taco, taco, taco.
Are they okay?
in order to be able to reach and everything, and that wasn't too comfortable. So just for the comfort and being able to better enjoy myself on the bike, I did have to swap out for the mini apes. One of the other things I do recommend that you change is the headlight. I don't know what it is about the stock headlight, but it is so dim. Like, it is not, I would not rely on using that at night. It is so dim, it doesn't illuminate very much. Swap it out. So if I was going to recommend 3 things to swap out, again, depending on your stature, depending on your size, like if you're a shorter rider, then the stock handlebars are probably going to be perfectly fine for you. So keep that in mind. But for me, I would say the 2 things that you should really seriously consider swapping out almost immediately on if you buy a Indian Scout is the seat and the headlight. Those are probably going to be the 2 biggest things that you can do to improve your quality of life on the bike. Because the headlight's going to help you be seen, so it's going to help from a safety standpoint as well as being able to see better at night if you do ride at night. And then the seat's obviously going to help you better control the bike and obviously have a more comfortable ride as well. And then everything else, with the handlebars, if you're a taller rider, that's also, I would say, a top priority to swap out as well. But for everything else, it's a nice to change if you need to, and if you really care about it. So things like the exhaust, adding grips on the handlebars, adding a fairing, things like that, nice. They make incremental changes, but not a huge significant change in terms of comfort and performance. So in terms of how the bike handles, it, in my opinion, again, not extremely educated, and I haven't ridden a ton of bikes, but the bike handles very well from what I wanted to do. I haven't had any challenges with it. I haven't had any problems with it at all. Handles very well. It's very predictable from my experience. And because this bike does have ABS, and it has come in handy a couple of times. So if you're a new rider thinking about the Scout, I actually highly recommend it. I only had 6 months of experience under my belt before I bought this bike, and I recommend it. It's especially the ABS version. It's come in handy, and I don't have to worry about the bike flying out from underneath me if I accelerate too hard. It's very predictable, and it's a lot of fun. It gives you performance where you need it, and it's not so overwhelming to the point where you got to really worry about it. Of course, you should always respect the bike. I'm not saying you don't have to worry about that. You should always respect the bike. So my overall impressions with the bike have been very, very positive. I've had a ton of fun on this bike. I've put it through numerous different environments, taken it on the highway for the couple of times I've had to commute to work. Most of my riding is done on the weekend just for fun. There have been a couple of times where I will have a passenger, I'll have Tiny Tater on the bike. So if you want to see how the bike handles, you can watch our day trip to Monterey. So I'll annotate that in the corner so you can watch that. It's a lot of fun. That's a fun video we made. So it can absolutely handle two up. And the bike does feel like it's straining just a tiny bit with 2 people on the bike. Again, I'm 200 pounds, Tiny Tater's 100 or about 100, 110. And so you can think about having 300 pounds on the bike and it still performs fairly well. I don't have any concerns with having 2 people on the bike. So, and then we took it on the highway and I was cruising 75, 80 the whole time. So it's got no issues with that. So it can handle 2 up very well, handles very well, done a lot of twisty riding, kind of like twisty roads, so kind of like this, so you don't have to worry about that. Really the biggest thing you do have to worry about is leaning the bike. The lean angle isn't phenomenal, so you should expect to scrape your pegs. But again, that comes with learning, so you learn how to ride, how much to lean, and you scrape the pegs every now and then, and who cares, right? It happens. So it's a super fun bike. I've really enjoyed it. Just change those few quality of life things on the bike and you're going to be good to go. And I've had absolutely no issues with the bike at all from a maintenance standpoint. Now I'll do my T-clock, check the tire pressure, check the brakes, check to make sure everything's still good, and the bike's never given me any issues whatsoever. So I'm about 7,000 miles and no issues with the belt. I've just had to swap out the tires because they were starting to get fairly low. I changed the front brakes, due to change the rear brakes, and I'll be doing that this weekend as well. But the bike's, super easy to work on. It's not too finicky, it's not too hard, everything's pretty straightforward, and by no means am I a mechanic, so a lot of the stuff I'm doing on the bike I'm doing for the first time, and I don't really work on cars at all either. I've actually never worked on my car. I've never even changed the battery or the air filter on my car. I've always just brought it in for servicing. But when I got the bike, that was one of the things I wanted to do, was to learn how to maintain the bike myself, and the Scout I think is really easy to work on. The hardest thing I've ever had to do on the bike was to put the wrap on, and that was to take the tank off. But even then, that wasn't too hard. Just unbolt 4 screws, undo 2 plugs, pull out a few hoses, and that's it. And you can pull off the tank, and it's super easy. I haven't had to adjust the belt or anything just yet, but that'll be one of the things I'll learn how to do. So working on the bike is super easy. So if you're not mechanically inclined, but you want to be, I think this is a great place to start. If not, you can always take it into your dealer. Nothing wrong with that either. So to summarize, I wouldn't say there's anything inherently bad about the bike. There's nothing that, with the exception of the headlight, I think the headlight is pretty bad. But with the exception of that, everything is very manageable, right? You can deal with the seat, you can deal with everything else. And if you're a tall rider, I do recommend swapping out the handlebars. That's going to improve your quality of life on the bike. But there's nothing inherently bad in my experience with the bike. There's nothing beyond the headlight equipment that I would say, this is terrible, this could be a deal breaker. This could be something that ruins the bike for you. I can't think of anything that comes to mind in that regard. But there are a ton of perks and there's a ton of great things about this bike. I thoroughly enjoy this bike. It handles well, it's a super fun bike, it's got great performance. Does it have the most performance compared to other bikes? Absolutely not. But is it still a fun bike, and does it still have performance where you need it? Yes. Will you be able to do pretty much anything that you want to do with it? Yes. I don't, with the exception of taking it off-road, that I probably wouldn't recommend. But then again, you're not buying the Scout for that. So I would say it's a great kind of jack-of-all-trades bike, right? I wouldn't say it's exceptional in any one regard, but it's really great in most every other regard. It's going to pretty much do everything that you want it to do. It's easy to maintain, easy to work on. It checks all the boxes, and it covers everything that you want it to cover. So, are there any people that I would not recommend this bike to? I would say for the vast majority of people, male, female, none of that really matters in my opinion. I would think for the vast majority of people, they're going to have a ton of fun on this bike. Beginner, experienced. It's the only people that I can think of that might not be too happy on this bike are folks who maybe weigh over 350 pounds, or people who are over 6'4". Those are really the only types of people that I can think of that might not be too happy on this bike. And even for short riders, I think this bike is going to be perfectly fine because the seat is super low. I don't think there's going to be any real challenges in terms of being able to put your foot down on the bike. I could be wrong. If you're a short rider, if you've ridden the Scout and I'm wrong, then please do leave a comment down below. Please educate me in that. I actually haven't had Tiny Tater try to see if she can put her foot down on that. She's 5'1". So if you're considering the Indian Scout, I do highly, highly recommend it. I think there are very few things that are on the negatives about this bike, and there are a ton of positives. It's not going to be the best at any one thing, but it's going to be great at most everything. So if you just want a good all-around cruiser bike, this is it. Oh, that is actually one other thing. This is a super minor thing, but another thing that is absolutely terrible on the bike is the horn. Even if I'm going at a moderate speed, I can't hear the horn. I can't tell you if it's on or not when I push the button. Like, I'll push it now and okay, that one I could hear a little bit, but if I'm definitely on the highway, I can guarantee you will not hear the horn. So the horn is pretty bad. Don't rely on the horn. And you can swap it out. I haven't swapped out the horn. If you have any questions or want to share your experiences with the Scout, I do recommend leave a comment down below, so that way other folks can get a very educated perspective in terms of if this bike is going to be right for them. Again, I think so. I think unless you're on the extreme ends of, you know, weight or height or something else, then I'm pretty sure this bike is going to be perfectly fine for you. So to summarize, the things that suck about the Scout: the headlight, the horn when you're at speed, and depending on your height, the handlebars are going to be things that you're going to want to swap out fairly quickly. Things that need to be improved: the seat is probably the biggest one there. Shocks, debatable. And things that you can have a lot of fun with on the bike, are that you can swap out and change, are primarily going to be the exhaust, and you can add a fairing if you would like. For me, it's more about style. The fairing isn't actually going to do much in terms of blocking wind for me, because again, my chest is like a freaking sail because I'm so big. So I'm going to have to get like a Challenger style fairing if I wanted to actually block out the wind. But you know, those are kind of the things that you can change physically on the bike pretty quickly, and those are things that I would actually recommend that you add on. And I also added on a sissy bar again, but that's just so I don't have to wear my backpack when I go on longer rides. And the sissy bar has definitely come in handy. So all things considered, I don't see myself getting rid of this bike anytime soon. Super fun. It's versatile enough to where it covers everything I need it to. And I haven't had any issues with it at all whatsoever. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And with that, as always, be brave, everybody, do good, and take care of yourselves. Peace!